Jai Anilo Premadano Paramakacho
Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki, Prabhupada ki, Honor to Koti Vaishnava ki, Nam Japa Haridas Thakur ki, Rendra Kahosi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyama Radha Kuliki Govardhana ki, Sri Vrindavan ki, Sri Bhaktivedanta ki, Sri Maya Purnadadita ki, Purnamai ki, Ganga Devi ki, Bhakti Devi ki, Tulsi Devi ki, Samavira Bhaktivedanta ki, Sankirtan Yoga ki, Sri Radha Kalchandji Dham ki, all glorious to the Temple, all glorious to the Temple, all glorious to the Temple, for Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, Text number 18. Tad Darshanalada Padiputantoro Risya Anuhu Prema Parashru Lochanaha Nama Hadambujam Asya Vishva Shrit Yat Paramahamsyena Tathagamyate Tadharshanalad Parikrutantaro Risya Tanu Prema Parashulochanaha Nama Padambujamasya Visvarit Yat Paramahamsyena Pathadigamyate Tadharshanalad Parikutantantaro Risya Tanu Prema Parashulochanaha Nama Padambujamasya Visvarit Yat Paramahamsyena Padhadigamyate Tadharshanalad Parikutantaro Risya Tanu Prema Parashulochana Nama Padambujamasya Visvashrik Yat Paramahamsyena Padhadi Gamyate.
Tathājanālāda pariplutataro Krishyanti Tanu Prema Parashu Lochana Kannam Pradam Puja Asya Vishvasri Yatharamahasyena Pradam Digamjite
Ladies.
Tadarshana pariputantaro Shatanu prema varashulochanaha Padam bujamasya vishvashri Paramahamsena pathavidam yate
Touched by that audience of the Lord. Darshana, audience. Alada, joy. Paripluta, overwhelmed. Antaraha, within the heart. Nisya, full in ecstasy. Tanuhu, body. Prema bhara, in full transcendental love. Ashru, tears. Lochanaha, in the eyes. Nanama, bow down. Padambujam, under the lotus feet. Asya, of the Lord. Visvasrit, the creator of the universe. Yat, which Paramahamsyena, by the great liberated soul. Patha, the path. Adigamyati, is followed. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It's a long purport, so I'm going to comment as we go through the purport. We may lose something of the flow, but it'll be hopefully clear that because there's a lot of details in the purport, a lot of points to cover. Translation. Lord Brahma, thus seeing the personality of Godhead in His fullness, was overwhelmed with joy within his heart, and thus in full transcendental love and ecstasy, his eyes filled with tears of love. He thus bowed down before the Lord. That is the way of the highest perfection for the living being, Paramahamsas. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that this great literature is meant for Paramahamsas. Paramo Nirmat Saranam Satam. That is, the Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for persons completely free from malice. In the conditioned life, the malicious life begins from the top, namely bearing malice against the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The personality of Godhead is an established fact in all the revealed scriptures, and in the Bhagavad Gita, the personal feature of the Supreme Lord is especially mentioned. So much so that the last portion of the great literature has emphatically stressed that one should surrender unto the personality of Godhead to be saved from the miseries of life. Unfortunately, persons with impious backgrounds do not believe in the personality of Godhead. This malicious nature in the conditioned soul continues up to the stage when a person wants to be one with the Lord. Let's stop here and then also. So first of all, we welcome so many devotees here, and thank you for coming to Radha. And hope that your presence here will be a joyous one. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada, first of all, is discussing the qualification for understanding transcendental literature. Normally, one simply needs to be attentive and have a reasonable amount of intelligence to understand what they're reading. However, there is an extra quality which is required to understand transcendental literature, namely that one should not be envious. In one sense, we could almost say that this qualifies practically everybody from hearing transcendental literature. Because if it were not for the fact that we were envious, how then did we come into this material world? But it seems that there is at least a reasonable amount of freedom from envy that is required. And specifically, Prabhupada mentions that envy begins originally from enviousness of God. So this is an indication of our ontological existence, that we must have had some contact with God to be envious of God. Sometimes it is stated that we never had any contact with God. That idea is put forward. But if Prabhupada emphasizes the point that you are envious of God, you cannot be envious of someone who you have never had association with. It's common sense. You're envious of someone who you know. So, somehow or other, we have become envious, and we have fallen into this material world. And the person who we became envious of, namely God, never retaliates in anger. Again, it is a normal response that if someone is angry with you or hates you or tries to harm you, you strike back. But this is certainly not so of God. And sometimes God is called the Father of all living beings. Sometimes a child will, out of anger, hit the parent. But because the parent loves the child, the parent will never retaliate with any type of malice. So the giving of Srimad Bhagavatam, or let's say the giving of Bhagavad Gita, the beginning of Krishna speaking the Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna speaking, in a sense, or inspiring Vyasa to give us Srimad Bhagavatam, are indications of how God is never malicious, but always trying to reclaim the conditioned souls. So it requires that we appreciate, we bow down, just as we'll see that Brahmaji, who is a very highly qualified person, this verse is describing a person known as Brahma, who is the first living being in the universe. According to our literatures, it is not Adam and Eve. It is Brahma, the first created being, born directly from the lotus navel of the Lord, Vargadakshaya Vishnu. Vishnu is a form of God for creation. In our tradition, in our theology, God has many faces or many personalities or many forms. And the one which we worship as most dear is this form of Krishna, the supreme enjoyer. And Krishna is the supreme enjoyer because, in other words, Krishna has no work to perform. Although he says in Gita, even I perform work. And he does so, surely, when he comes within this world to teach by his example. He takes up the position of cow herding, in a sense which is like work. And he does that cow herding in the spiritual world also, but here he does it with the understanding not only that it brings transcendental joy, but as he points out in the Gita, even I perform my duties. So later on when he leaves, maybe it's a better example, when he leaves Vrindavan and goes as a king, Kshatriya king, he does do his duties in various ways. He gets married, he has children, he does so many things which are dutiful. He protects the citizens who are surrendered unto him. He acts very much according to duty. This is known as Vasudeva Krishna. This is Krishna who has the opulences of Lord Narayan. But in a sense, as Krishna in Vrindavan, he really has no duty in the same sense to perform. But he just relishes, he enjoys, he sports with his eternal associates. So this is the feature of God whom we worship as most dear. Most dear means that he reveals more opulences of a different sort than any other form of God. His opulences are not the opulences which inspire warm reverence, but they're the opulences which conquer the minds or the hearts of his devotees. Specifically, they're the opulence of loving dealings with his associates. They're the opulence of the flute which he plays, and the sounds which are so wonderful, produced by that flute, that they captivate all living beings. His love is the most powerful emotion that one can feel in this world. And this worldly love is inspired by the arrows of Cupid. We can just imagine how transcendentally attractive Krishna is if thousands and thousands of Cupids become attracted by Krishna. So this is the opulence of Krishna, his beauty, his flute, his transcendental dealings with his devotees. These are the opulences. And that transcendental dealing with the devotees is twofold opulence, involving the devotees themselves and how loving they are, the nature of their love, and what happens in the exchange of love between Krishna and his devotees. In other words, his pastimes. So this is what makes us attracted to Krishna. And the paintings in this room depict those pastimes. The deity, Krishna holding his flute, decorated beautifully, with his associates, the best of all of his associates, Srimati Radharani. These are all indications, and they are causes to transcendental love. All of these things are meant to inspire transcendental emotion. And in this verse, that is what's being discussed here. It mentions here, Prema Bhara, that Lord Brahma saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his fullness. He was overwhelmed with joy within his heart. Prema Bhara. Sometimes we speak about love for God. People say, I have love for God. This is a science of loving God. As it says, Prabhupada says in the purport, this literature is meant for Paramahamsas. It is meant for devotees who are compared to be like great swans. Why is a devotee compared to be a great swan? Because a swan has the ability, when first of all, swans live in very beautiful places. Lakes which are full of lotuses, very idyllic settings. And swans are very discriminating. They have the capacity to take a mixture of water and milk and sift through the two and separate out the milk from the water. So the milk is very valuable. Water is more common than milk. Milk is considered to be far more valuable. It's difficult to live on water, but you can live on milk. It's life-giving. If a swan has the capacity to do this, it means it can extract what is most valuable. So a Paramahamsa knows how to extract what is valuable from this world, the essence of everything. Everything has some value. And the value is to see everything in relationship with Krishna. This is transcendental vision. It is not that the only way to see Krishna is to see the form of Krishna in the form of the deity, or to see Krishna in the form of, or hear Krishna's holy name, or taste Krishna prasad, or read Krishna's literatures. Certainly these are directly Krishna. But Krishna can be seen in everything if we see everything in relationship to Krishna. The only qualification to be able to see everything in relationship with Krishna is to understand that we are Krishna's servants. The reason why we cannot see things in relationship to Krishna is because normally we see ourselves as enjoyers, as masters of all we survey. And so we tend to see things in relationship to our false self. And we try to lord it over, to enjoy that thing which we are dealing with. If you take the position as a servant of Krishna, then practically you can see everything in relationship to Krishna. That means you'll see Krishna everywhere, under all circumstances, and you will never feel yourself to be separate from Krishna. So a devotee who has such Krishna conscious vision does not feel awkward in any situation. It doesn't matter where they go. They may go to heaven, they may go to hell. It doesn't make any difference. Otherwise, most people constantly think, I want to go to heaven. Because heaven is where God is. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not pray, I want to go to heaven. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was prepared to take birth after birth after birth, as long as he could be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. So the devotional service of the Lord means I see myself as a servant, I see Krishna as the master. And I see this world as an opportunity, an unlimited opportunity for doing service to Krishna. So there's nothing which is you can say practically nothing, which is opposed to, or let's say, does not provide an opportunity to serve Krishna. I was thinking, well, what about being a butcher? Well, the only thing I can say about that is that at least in contact with the butcher, we get the opportunity to preach. This is wrong. This is not appropriate. No, there's nothing in the world that we cannot find as an opportunity for remembrance of Krishna, even if in the sense of butcher is such a negative example. Well, it provides us at least that. It's still a very negative example. It's not a good example, but it does not hamper us in our spiritual advancement. And we can use it to demonstrate how Krishna is something of the philosophy. So, all of this means non-impiousness. The point that I'm making is non-impiousness. And living amongst the devotees is an opportunity to practice to be non-envious. It's as good an opportunity as you'll get. And it's as difficult a test as any you'll have to pass. Because if we started out by being envious of the person who is the most worthy of our appreciation, if we start out and envy begins with that person who has practically everything that we should be appreciative of, then it stands to reason that we may also become envious of his devotees. It's not, you don't become envious of someone who doesn't have anything that you want. You become envious of someone who has something that you want. And as devotees, there are still things we want. For one thing, we want to be a good devotee. So it's possible that we can become envious of someone who has better devotion than we. That's entirely possible. In fact, that is exactly what happens. Our envy shifts from God onto his devotees. If we see someone who has more determination than us, we can become envious. If we see someone who's more humble than us, we can become envious. If we see someone who has more facilities than we do for serving Krishna, we can become envious. And the difficulty is that just as becoming envious of Krishna causes to fall in this world, becoming envious of his devotees keeps us in this world. So sometimes someone may say that it sounds like it's better just not to be with the devotees. On the other hand, without being with the devotees, we have no way of gaining strength and making advancement. It's really, a sword with two edges. It cuts both ways. It's very, very beneficial, but it's very dangerous. Like, Prabhupada uses the example that a razor, or shaving with a razor is very dangerous because a little inattentiveness can cut the skin and blood will be drawn. So living in spiritual life is like living on a razor's edge. You can get a lot done, but you can easily become injured. So all of this means to say that we have to be very, very cautious in our practice of Krishna consciousness if we want to be successful. We cannot emphasize that enough. We have to recognize the danger of association if we're in an envious mood. Now, how do you get free from envy? The whole process makes you free from envy. The process of chanting will make you free from envy. You chant God's names, it will purify your heart of lust and envy and greed. If you read transcendental knowledge, this will help. If you associate with persons who are merciful, that may touch your heart. That even though you're envious of them, they still give you love. That's a very, very convincing point. Eventually you realize I should love this person. I should never do anything harmful. That's the beginning of our recovery. When we start to take that attitude, I should never be cruel to this person. This person loves me. It begins to inspire our confidence, our love. This is how it was our experience with Prabhupada. And we met a person who was such a Paramahamsa, who had no cause for any ill towards us. And so naturally, I want to serve this person. I want to give my life to serve this person. And this should come from association with the devotees. Now Prabhupada speaks about this malice. This malicious nature in the conditioned soul continues up to the stage when a person wants to be one with the Lord. And thus, even the greatest of the empiric philosophers speculating on becoming one with the Supreme Lord cannot become a Paramahamsa because the malicious mind is there. Therefore, the Paramahamsa stage of life can be attained only by those who are fixed in the practice of Bhakti Yoga. This Bhakti Yoga begins if a person has the firm conviction that simply discharging devotional service to the Lord in full transcendental love can elevate him to the highest perfectional stage of life. Brahmaji believed in this art of Bhakti Yoga. He believed in the instructions of the Lord to execute tapa, and he discharged the function with great penance and thus achieved the greatest success of seeing the Vaikuntha Lokas and the Lord also by personal experience. So, there are so many great speculative philosophers, both in Western philosophy and in Indian philosophy, and in Chinese philosophy for that matter. In Eastern and Western philosophy, there are great speculators. But Prabhupada says such persons cannot become Paramahamsas. Because the only way to become a Paramahamsa, at least a Paramahamsa as we define a Paramahamsa, is by devotional service. You cannot speculate and understand through speculation the transcendental nature of God. It is described that to understand the method, the word gyan means knowledge. To gain knowledge of God is not simply done by empiric accumulation of empiric evidence. Not going around and and being able to examine this, 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 and put two and two together and gradually build up to a understanding of God. That will not give you the level of knowledge of God, which is called prema bhara. Prema bhara means full love. If you really have knowledge of God, the result is love of God. It's not simply an intellectual conception to be held within the mind. It's an overwhelming experience. Here you see what it states, what happens to Brahma because of this. It says here, his eyes filled with tears of love, and he felt ecstasy. It's an overwhelming experience. Just like if someone falls in love with someone else, that love fills up their entire being. Every cell of their body, every nerve, every movement of the mind, all the thoughts become absorbed in that person. It's total saturation. It's not simply, you can imagine a sponge which is full of the liquid of water, as opposed to something which is just touched on the surface of the water. That's the difference between Gyan and Big Gyan. Gyan is just, the knowledge is there, but it's just like superficial. It doesn't go deep. It doesn't pervade and permeate every fiber, every part of the being of the individual. Whereas prema bhara means that. There's an entire experience of love. So, when knowledge is there, when that knowledge becomes imbued or infused, with bhakti, then the knowledge becomes realized knowledge of a different sort. That's how you can understand God. It's described when the Vladini Shakti, when the potency of Srimati Radharani and her associates infuse the pleasure-giving potency. And she is known as the pleasure-giving potency personified. She's the personification of Vladini Shakti. So Srimati Radharani, by her mercy, she bestows Prema Bhakti. She gives the ability to the living being to give pleasure to Krishna. And when the living being gives pleasure to Krishna, the living being feels pleasure. Because then the living being is back in its original constitutional position as the giver of pleasure to Krishna. So this knowledge potency becomes infused by the bhakti potency. And when Jnana Shakti becomes infused and merges with Vladini Shakti, when they become strengthened by Vladini Shakti, then Jnana turns into Vigyan, or realization. And that realization is an overwhelming experience of just wanting to be Krishna's servant, birth after birth, seeing oneself as insignificant, as the smallest of these most insignificant creatures, as totally unworthy, and seeing Krishna as the most wonderful and worthy being, and wanting to give everything, one's entire existence, to Krishna's service. This is Prema Bhakti. So, that's so different than the mental speculation of philosophers. That realization of Krishna is so totally different than the mental speculation of a philosophical sort. And in that sense, therefore, it is very difficult for mental speculators to appreciate the value of devotion service. In a sense, they don't want to surrender to God. And therefore they get tricked. Maya Vriti Jnana. Maya Vriti Jnana means their knowledge is stolen by illusion. So they don't get they're duskritina. They don't get the opportunity to do devotional service. Of course, Lord Chaitanya, part of his mission was to trick even such persons. And he did so. When he was in Benares, he dealt with Prakasananda Saraswati and his so many Mayavadi followers. He dealt in Puri also with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And in different places, he was able to even transform such speculators. The Buddhists also, he dealt with them. And Srila Prabhupada, as the follower of Lord Chaitanya, as the carrier of Gauravani Pracharya, he carries the message of Lord Chaitanya all around the world. He also has taken this mission, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi, Paschanta Deshatara, to annihilate, to transform the Mayavadis and the Shunyavadis, the impersonalists and voidists into Prema Bhaktas, devotees who feel prema. What a mission. Most difficult mission of all, really. And it is the mission. It is our mission. This is the mission. When Prabhupada gave us that mantra, that mantra is, in one sense, the most important mantra to tell us what is our mission. It's to take the message. I mean, you can just see this mantra is so perfect. Prabhupada says, I'm the servant of my Guru. And Prabhupada says, I'm the servant of Saraswati Goswami. I bring the message of Lord Chaitanya. And my business in bringing that message is to transform impersonalists and voidists into lovers of God. That's our mission. That is the mission of the International Society of Krishna. And to do that, we have to enter into every aspect of society. every aspect of society. Whatever we feel we're working in, to whatever degree our capacity is, we have to take it, because everybody is infected by this impersonalism and voidism. Even people who say, I'm a believer in God. What has God become today? Practically, for most people, God is an impersonal conception. You push and push, you'll find it. Impersonal conception. Or void. So we've got our work cut out for us. Huge task. Don't forget that. Please don't forget that in your own daily lives while you're eking out your existence. Remember what the mission is. Bhakti Yoga. So then Prabhupada explains about Lord Brahma seeing the Vaikuntha Lokas. And he says, no one can reach the abode of the Supreme Lord by any mechanical means of the mind or machine. But one can reach the abode of the Vaikuntha Lokas simply by following the process of Bhakti Yoga, because the Lord can be realized only through the Bhakti Yoga process. Lord Brahmaji was actually sitting on his lotus seat, and from there, by executing the process of Bhakti Yoga in great seriousness, he could see the Vaikuntha Lokas with all variegatedness, as well as the Lord in person and his associates. Now here's the method, right? This is the method of how to see Vaikuntha Loka. It doesn't say that you get on, a ship, like that group that suicide poet, right? They wanted to meet up with the ship and drive the tail of the comet. But it doesn't say that to you, right? And it doesn't say you can't get to the kingdom of God by any mechanical means. And there's two types of mechanical means that Prabhupada explains here. One type is the means of a ship, an actual physical ship. And the other type is by a subtle method, which he also calls mechanical, of the mind. Neither of those machines can take you beyond this universe. They can only bring you to some part of the universe. Because the universe is made of matter, and it's by mechanical means you can deal with matter. But when you want to deal with spirit, you have to use a different means. You have to use spirit. So that spiritual method is the process of bhakti, as we're doing it. And to prove it, Prabhupada says, to prove it, you see, Brahmaji sits in one location and goes there. Therefore, Prabhupada said, may you become Krishna conscious in this lifetime. He wrote me a letter, and he said it many times to many people. This is a statement he would make. May you become liberated within this body. Liberation, Prabhupada said, to be liberated doesn't mean you have to grow 2 more arms. To be liberated means that you, and he will explain what it means to be liberated here, how one can become liberated. I believe that he explains it here. How to be self-realized. How to Yes, so I'll keep that. Following in the footsteps of Lord Brahma, any person, even up to this day, can attain the same perfection by following the path of the Paramahamsa as recommended herein. Lord Chaitanya also approved of this method of self-realization for men in this age. How to do it? One should first, with all conviction, believe in the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. It's like when I first joined, Prabhupada would say to me again and again, just become convinced that Krishna is God. And like every day I went to see him, just become convinced that Krishna is God. Are you convinced that Krishna is God? But Prabhupada repeats that here. One should first, with all conviction, believe in the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Not just that there is God, that Krishna is God. Because Krishna is the personal form of God. Otherwise, we don't have any. Practically, we have no literature. You study world religion, you'll see. Show me a world religious literature that presents the personality of God. For example, you studied in a very reputed theological institution. What did you find?
They didn't know.
They didn't know. That's a fact. I also find the same on my studies. They don't know. anything about the personality of God. They know about there's, one of them they speak about a prophet, about the incarnation, but they don't know about God the Father's personality. So Prabhupada, that's what Prabhupada said, Bhagavan, the supreme personality of Godhead, Krishna. And without making effort to realize it by speculative philosophy, one should prefer to hear about him from the Srimad Bhagavad Gita and later from the text of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Just hearing, such a simple process. One should hear such discourses from a person, Bhagavatam. Who is a person, Bhagavatam? A person who is living by the instructions of the Bhagavatam, the book Bhagavatam. A person who is following the practices that Srila Prabhupada has given us is a person, Bhagavatam. You should hear from such a person. In other words, not someone who's just speaking from book knowledge, but someone whose life has been molded by the teachings of the Bhagavatam. That person is a Bhagavatam. Is a living Bhagavatam. You should hear from such discourses from a person, Bhagavatam, and not from the professional man, or from the karmi, or jnani, or yogi. Not from a person who's motivated by the desire for fruit of gain, karma, or jnani, whose nature is obsessed with his own intelligence and speculative abilities, right? Or yogi, one who wants to, by dint of yoga powers, achieve some elevated position. Not from such a person, but from a person who has only one ambition. That ambition is what? Today I was listening to a lecture this morning from Prabhupada, and the devotee said, we should want to be able to please Krishna, or want to be able to serve. Prabhupada said, no, you cannot. You do not know how to please Krishna. You should want to please your spiritual master. Very strong lecture Prabhupada gave this morning. The devotee was talking about realizing my swarup. Prabhupada said, don't talk about swarup. Don't talk about your eternal spiritual body until you've come over anartha nivritti. Until you've gotten rid of all of the anarthas, or all of the unwanted things in the heart. Don't start to think about it and speculate, what is my swarup? What is my eternal form? And then Prabhupada said, then the devotee continues that we should want to serve Krishna. Prabhupada said, you cannot know how to serve and please Krishna, but you can learn how to serve your spiritual master. And this is the system. Therefore, when people try to cut off this system, everything you can understand it, cutting off the whole process of devotional life. People are opposed to the idea of serving a human being, but they don't understand the necessity of serving the spiritual master. If the spiritual master is following, if he's a person Bhagavatam, if his life is dedicated to fulfilling and living by the message of the Bhagavatam, that person should be served. Spiritual master, we don't give limited understanding. So serving sadhu, serving shastra. The guru, there's diksha guru, shiksha gurus, serving the person who embodies the teachings. And in other words, getting instruction from one's guru and trying to fulfill that instruction. That is the method of pleasing Krishna. Yasya Prashad. This is the last statement from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his prayers in the morning. Yasya Prashad, Bhagavat Prashad, Yasya Prashad, Namatir. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one gets the mercy of Krishna. And without the mercy of the spiritual master, nobody can make any advancement. This is our process. We cannot do without this process. We cannot do without the guru-disciple relationship. Everything is hinging on that in this discipline, understanding of discipline succession. That is the secret of learning the science, Prabhupada says. One does not need to be in the renounced order of life. You don't have to be a sannyasi. Right? Because very few people are going to take sannyas. At least not in this type of formal form of sannyas. Very few people can take it. Women are not taking, they don't take sannyas. And most men don't take sannyas. So Prabhupada says, that's not important, because some, you see, in the Shankara Sampradaya, taking sannyas is the essential item for making advancement. So Prabhupada is addressing that point. This is not our system. We don't follow that system. that you have to become sannyasi. One doesn't have to be a renounced order of life. He can remain in his present condition of life, but he must search out the association of a bona fide devotee of the Lord and hear from him the transcendental message of the Lord with faith and conviction. This is the primary method of religion in this age. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, hearing and chanting about Vishnu in the association of a pure devotee. That's the primary method. That is the path of the Paramahamsa recommended herein, because Brahma is a householder. Brahma is a doer. He's an actor. He's a creator. He's Mr. Strict. He's the creator of the universe. And this is a very active person. Right? But what did he do? He heard two syllables, tapa. Do austerity, do penance. Now what Brahma's penance is, or what our penance is not exactly the same, but the principle is the same. Now what is the penance that Prabhupada describes in this paragraph? The penance of giving your hearing, your attention, your time to hearing the message of Krishna. That's the penance required. We perform that penance by japa, by chanting japa, by kirtan, and by hearing class. That this is most important. Nobody should neglect this. This is the primary activity in this age, hearing and chanting. That's the same kirtan movement. Therefore, I stress again and again that people should listen to tapes. I tell people this again and again. You're going to spend time in the bathroom bathing, you're going to spend time in your car driving, you spend time walking or doing something. Listen to the sound vibration. Don't waste time. Don't listen to your mind. Everybody has the opportunity to hear, and hearing is the religious process. It's recommended here. Among various holy names of the Lord, Krishna is also called Ajita, or one who can never be conquered by anyone else. Yet he can be conquered by the Paramahamsa path, as practically realized and shown by the great spiritual master, Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma has personally recommended this Paramahamsa Pantha in his own words as follows. Gyani prayasan udapasya namanta eva jivanti sanhu paritam bhavadhiya vartam stani stita shrutigatam tanuvan manovir ye prayaso jita jito piyasi taistrilokyam. Many times Prabhupada quotes this verse. Lord Brahma said, O my Lord Krishna, a devotee who abandons the path of empiric philosophical speculation aimed at merging in the existence of the Supreme and engages himself in hearing your glories. Prabhupada italicizes the word hearing. Hearing your glories and activities from a bona fide sadhu. Italicized, well, the word sadhu is italicized for the fact that it's also in Sanskrit, but sadhu, or saint, right? And who lives an honest life in the occupational engagement of his social life. Honest life in the occupation of his social life. It's telling you, you do your particular duty, whatever it may be. You earn your livelihood in an honest way. You don't have to be a sannyasi. You don't have to say, I want to give all this up and be a full-time, whatever that means. It doesn't say anything about that. It doesn't say that. It says you do your occupational duty, but hearing also, including that within that life of yours, hearing from the sadhu. Right? An honest life in the occupational engagement of the social life, that person can conquer you, your sympathy, Krishna's sympathy, and mercy, even though you are a jita or unconquerable. Therefore, Prabhupada was very pleased with her. Sometimes he saw Satsvarupa Maharaj and said, oh, you are a responsible man, right? You read in the Lilamrita when Satsvarupa would have to leave, all the devotees were sitting around Prabhupada, drinking up the nectar, right? And Satsvarupa would get up to go to work, right? He would come in for the lunch break and then go back to he was a social worker, in New York, and Prabhupada would single him out. You are responsible, which means what? That they are irresponsible. And to some extent they were. He was the more responsible of all of them. And Prabhupada didn't denigrate him that, oh, you're just a karma, you're working out there, you're wasting your time. You are the responsible person. So, Ajita, Krishna is unconquerable, but he can be conquered if a person does their duty. Right? Just like in the puppet show for the kids group, and they were singing, what did you say?
Do your duty.
Anyway, he sang it with a nice southern drawl. You gotta do your duty. I remember that's the only thing I remember from that puppet show. Luke was singing, you gotta do your duty. All the time. Power of the music. The whole puppet did 4 days of puppet show. I can only remember recently. So, it's not that, now, let us understand also the duty should be done properly. There are responsibilities. When you earn money, you have to contribute. You have to contribute, otherwise you're not doing your duty. And the money has to be earned honestly, it has to be used honestly. It's not that we're saying you can go and be a butcher, and that's, you're doing your duty. You should understand that. But it doesn't in any way discourage a person from working within this world. Right? It doesn't discourage that. And Brahma, Prabhupada said, is the example. Who could be more in the world than the person who's personally engineering the entire universe and all of the planets and all the situations for every living entity? Now, if you start complaining, the next time any temple manager or any person in here, starts complaining, oh, I have too much to do, just think about Brahma. You think you got more to do than go to Brahma? Does anybody think they could possibly have more to do than go to Brahma? So anybody who thinks, I'm over-engaged, just remember the example of Lord Brahma. But you took the time to hear. If you take the time to hear, then everything will be okay. Hear sufficiently. Make time to hear. Lord Brahma, so said, that is the path of Paramahamsas, which was personally followed by Lord Brahma and later recommended by him for attaining perfect success in life. Anybody have questions or comments?
Earlier in the class you mentioned how Prabhupada's non-envious mood, made one want to just give their whole life to it. But in the Bhagavad Gita and other places it's mentioned how one approaches the spiritual master, renders some service, makes inquiry, and it seems like they go on their way again. But in our Krishna consciousness movement following Prabhupada, everyone just wanted to give our life to him. Then later, when you're mentioning about the householders and other people are doing their own duties as well, maybe not quite so full time, but in those early days, all of us just wanted to give our life, give everything.
Yes. But how many of those early day givers of their lives to Prabhupada are still giving their lives to Prabhupada? Very few, but very few. So, if you recall, now let us realize that Prabhupada, we have to see what Prabhupada does in respect to some type of historical setting. Prabhupada comes to America with no followers. He has a short time in which to accomplish a huge mission. He therefore he therefore draws and attracts followers and gets them to dedicate their entire energy to helping him with his mission. Towards the very end of his mission, he says, I have something further to do. I want to establish Varnashram Dharma. Because he knows very well that most people cannot do this, and even those who have done it cannot continue to do it always. So what Prabhupada was able to do and inspire was necessary for that time. It may not be as important right now. And you should learn by experience. An intelligent person learns by experience. Our experience shows us that if a person tries to surrender beyond their capacity, sooner or later they go, water goes, it's like Arjuna wanted to do that, right? Arjuna wanted to give it all up and just go away and become a sannyasi. What did Krishna tell him? By your nature, you're going to be engaged by the way you are. It's in you to be a certain way. You can't artificially ignore that. So by our experience, as we grow older now, we do learn to detect that people will say, I just want to surrender everything. That's what they want. That's a sentiment very often. But it doesn't go deep enough. It won't carry them through their whole life. And therefore, what is our experience? Again, what experience have we got? The experience is that people who try to surrender too fast, right, and later on have to retrace their steps, they become confused and discouraged and sometimes bitter. And therefore, we found that it's better to get people to, move through the stages of life progressively, rather than just trying to do it completely all at once and then later on regret it. That's my response to you. Another comment or question, Karthikeya?
Of course, as you say, the pleasing of serving the spiritual master is the most important thing, is the connection with Krishna. And that sometimes is hampered by envy and all these anarthas that we have. So is prayer important? The meditation and the prayer is important. And if we pray to the spiritual master, and we pray to Krishna to please help us serve our spiritual master.
Yeah, of course we can pray, but you have to realize that if you pray, first of all, we have to examine what is the nature of the prayer. Is someone praying unconditionally or honestly? Like, as I often say, when you go to Mayapur, you see the powerful image of Lord Nrsimhadev. How many people are prepared to say, tear out all the, come in my heart and tear out every impurity? It's hard to say that. That's the first question. Do we pray with enough honesty? Or do we pray with, Krishna, I want to surrender 30%. Krishna, please take away most of the obstacles. Please leave the following ones. That's the first question. How honest is our prayer? The second thing is that how much do we believe in our prayer, the power of prayer? In other words, when you pray, Krishna takes 70% away, and Krishna starts to take 70% away, then you start thinking, actually, I only want to take 50% away. In other words, you pray, Hare Krishna, Krishna, please engage me in your service. And when Krishna starts to engage you in his service, we say, but not that much. I didn't really need that much. So, it's easy enough to talk about prayer, but I say, how honest do we pray? How honestly do we pray? And how much faith do we have in the power of prayer? When Krishna starts to answer our prayers, we say, that's not the answer I wanted. Why are you answering my prayer that way? I didn't think it was supposed to be. I mean, everybody who asked questions of Prabhupada had this experience. You ask Prabhupada a question, and he'd give you an answer which sometimes it was not at all what you sometimes, as Guruji, remember, Prajapati was reading about a thing from Guruji's book, and Guruji was saying, what was the incident about, what was it about? He thought Prabhupada didn't understand it. About the box, remember, for cudgel. Guru kept saying it's a rope. I mean, Prabhupada knew exactly what that box was. Similarly, Prabhupada knew when you asked him a question what it was that you needed to hear. Very well. In other words, he edited your question so that it was the proper question. And then he answered it. He corrected the question because sometimes the question wasn't to the point. So similarly, I say that the prayers are not always to the point. But you have to understand that you're dealing with someone who's God when you make your prayers. And Krishna knows how to make your prayers, he knows how to edit your prayers. So when he gives it back to you, when he gives you the copy back, he says, that's not exactly what I wrote. Well, that's what it means when you have a teacher. Krishna is the guru within the heart, right? He's Antarjami, he edits. He magnifies, right? Amplifies your prayer. You sing a song and the thing gets amplified over the speaker, it gets 20 times louder. Well, Krishna does that. You go to Krishna, that's why it says, when you would go to Krishna and offer him something with one hand, how many hands does he receive it with? 10, right? One of the forms of Krishna has 10 arms. So it says, when you want to offer something to the Lord with one and he's taking with 10, he's going to take a lot more than you offer. And that's what happens, right? Nobody came in here thinking they're going to offer everything they offer. I mean, I didn't. I don't know about you, but I don't think anybody does. I don't think anybody realizes what's involved with surrendering to Krishna. If you realized all the pain and tribulation, it would probably not, it would scare you away.
Now, supposedly that we get the right mood in the prayer.
Huh?
If we do get that right mood in the prayer, the sincerity, then it's better to pray to Krishna or to Guru.
You can't pray to Krishna. Your question is it better to serve Krishna or Guru? Is it better to pray to Krishna or Guru? It's the same thing. You cannot pray to Krishna without praying to Guru. You see, your Guru is everything you do is channeled through your Guru. So there's no question. You can say, who's the final? In any case, the Guru is involved. In any case, the Guru is involved. I mean, it's not a bad question. It's fair enough. The point is, who's the final target, of the prayer? Am I saying, my dear Krishna? Yes, of course we do that. But we should understand that the vita media of your Guru is carrying your prayer, is interceding on your behalf. Prabhupada says that when you pray to Krishna, Radharani intercedes on your behalf. She's standing by Krishna and she's saying to Krishna, this person is more sincere than I am. Please listen. And if Radharani doesn't do that, you have no chance. And how does Radharani do that? Because she sees you connected to your Guru, who's connected to his Guru, who's connected to his Guru. And she sees that this is an authorized person. This is one of our personnel, of our company. This is not some strange person.
The same point. When Prabhupada producing fresh categorical values, so he was distributing them and then he get to some librarian. And the librarian mentioned to me, if you write book, that's something people read and put it aside. You write book and that is done. And Prabhupada put it that my Guru Maharaj is speaking to me.
Okay, so what's your point?
So now we should see that also master in many ways.
Okay. Ramchandra gives the example of Prabhupada, who was writing back to Godhead magazine and selling in Delhi, went to the librarian for selling his magazines, and she said, you should write books. She or me, I don't know. Huh? A male librarian said, you should write books because people just take the magazines and put them aside, but books are permanent. And Prabhupada took it that his guru was instructing him through the librarian. So Ramchandra's point is, you should also understand that the guru comes in many ways. That means when another devotee approaches you, and you think, I don't have to listen to you, you're not my guru. Prabhupada surely didn't have to listen to the librarian. And yet Prabhupada did. I got a letter from a professor. If you read this letter, I immediately took that letter. Actually, it's one of the first times we've done it. I took the letter, the original of it, and put it in a plastic envelope to preserve it. Because I thought this is probably the most, this letter was clearly stated by Prabhupada. The professor wrote to me, to serve the academy is to serve ISKCON and vice versa. To serve ISKCON is to serve the academy and vice versa. I mean, it was a mission statement, as clear as any was, and it said a lot of other very nice things, but it was very clear to me that this was, how could this man speak these words? He spoke it in a way that no devotee had, many devotees were saying things to me in a similar way, but the words were like, it was, if anyone is accustomed to reading Prabhupada's letters, read that letter, they would have thought, this was written by a guru. I'm sure it was intended. And he said, I want to know more about A.C. Bhaktivedanta. I want to learn more about A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and ISKCON. You can read the studies, it's very significant. So I could understand what Ramchandra is saying, that Prabhupada, was speaking through this person. Yes, Dharmadas.
A quick question, Sri Gurudev. One of our instructions is not to cause distress to other living entities. And yet, if we have a job and we go out in the working world, sometimes we cause a lot of distress to other living entities, and sometimes it's part of our duty. How does that affect our devotional life?
Not to cause distress to other living entities, conjunction, yet when we go out into the world, we often cause distress to many living entities. How does it affect our devotional life? Therefore, you have to give some portion of the results of your work to Krishna, so that Krishna says, I will protect you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. So if you will not incur any sinful reactions, because you're trying to give a good portion of your income, of your earning from that work in the service of Krishna. Krishna says you will not get reactions. That's the necessity. Devotees who are householders should understand why it's important to give money to Krishna. You can say it's washing the money. Well, this is the recommended process. When you're in Krishna Sutta, you're writing down the ladies and men who have Sankirtan vehicles, or anyone, right? If you're going in your car, have you ever noticed, when you get your windshield cleaned, what do you notice on the windshield? Bugs. Right? How many bugs do you kill? I mean, that's a pretty gory, gruesome thing, isn't it? If you're on Krishna's mission, if you're driving that vehicle for Krishna, there's no reaction. But if you're driving it to, go to wherever, then you get the reaction. And it's true for everything. So you have to be on Krishna's work at every moment. Then there's no reaction. And if your family is a Krishna conscious family, not engaged in sense enjoyment, but actually Krishna conscious, right? Then even serving your family is Krishna's mission. But that means they should be lean and thin. And I don't mean physically lean and thin, I mean their lives should be, there should be the minimum of sense gratification. It can't be no sense gratification, but it can be minimum. No sense gratification, by that I mean, minimum sense gratification means it's devotional. I mean to say, you can eat nice food, but it should be offered to Krishna. You can live in a nice place, which is clean and proper, but it should be full of pictures of Krishna, etc. You can have a nice car, but it should be used in Krishna service. I need to say, we don't just say, oh, that's, you don't have everybody's car should look like the job. I think one day, Krishna will give him another car. He'll come home and he'll find that he has won. It'll be like Saddam and a brand new, spanking new car. And a big bow. Krishna was the car instructor. All right, so any Mataji's? Yeah.
I was wondering, you said the most important thing was to serve a spiritual master. So what do you do when you don't have a spiritual master?
You do have a spiritual master, because Krishna says, Prabhupada wrote me a letter that as soon as you start to chant Hare Krishna, something like, as soon as you begin to, I said, Prabhupada, when are you going to come to you? We're looking forward to your coming to perform initiations. And Prabhupada said, the initiator is already present as soon as one begins to chant the holy name. Krishna is the Adi Guru. He is himself the Guru. And until you have taken shelter. First of all, you've taken shelter already of Prabhupada, because everything you're doing has been defined by our Prabhupada. So you've already accepted Prabhupada as your guru. Anybody who comes into this movement has Prabhupada as their guru. He is the founder guru of this movement. He's the principal instructing guru of this movement. So you can't say, you couldn't do it. If you didn't have a spiritual master, you wouldn't be sitting here today.
Okay.
Similarly, there's so many devotees here who have acted as instructing gurus for you also. You can't say, I have no guru. You have so many gurus already. So that's my answer. And Krishna himself is guru, guiding you from within the heart. So you're full of gurus. Head to toe. Otherwise, we have no life. We can't go. We're blind. All right. Anybody else? Okay, let us stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Premanandi.